Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Success After Trauma, where we bring on special guests. And today's guest is really special because he shares my name, or maybe I share his name. Today, I think we might even. I just thought about this. Maybe we'll call it the Tale of Two Gregs. But we have Greg on today. And Greg there's this like running joke between me and Greg that possibly the most rescheduled guest, me and Greg been trying to link up with each other for probably about 2 months now. And we finally got to it. And I'm going to learn about Greg with you guys today. I just know this much. I know that Greg has a story like all of us. And I know that today Greg heals and shares his energy through creative arts. And that's about all I know. So together we're going to learn a little more. Greg, thank you for being on. Can you tell the guests a little bit about yourself? And at whatever level you're comfortable, would you kind of take us back to the beginning before art? What was life like and what brought you to art?
I would love to. And it's really great to be here and to finally connect with you. And yes, Greg and Greg, depending on how old you are, we could have been named Greg at the same time, different parts of the country. I guess what started my journey is, I guess like a lot of people have experience with childhood trauma in relationship to how chaotic our home was and what kind of like violence we experienced growing up. And depending on like, sometimes it's not a lot, maybe it could be one event, but like for me, it was more sustained. It was more a consistent role of what do you want to call it? Like unbalanced home life and trauma up until my teens. And so I think that's kind of what started it, I guess, my creative role. I mean, like as soon as I moved to a different town during 11th grade, and I started 11th grade at this new school. I was very nervous and scared, but that's when I started getting leads in all the shows and like getting involved in like doing speech contests. And like, that's when that part that lit a fire under me. And
Okay.
Since 11th grade, I knew I wanted to be a performer. I knew I wanted to be starting out as a musical theater performer. And so that started that chapter of my creative life.
Dude, that's exciting. So tell me a little bit about when, or at whatever level you want to share with the listeners, how did imbalance, how did the imbalance in life play out for you? Go ahead.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The imbalance, like
Or
kind
imbalance
of
in the home, if you will. Forgive me. Go ahead.
Oh sure, yeah. And I'm happy to share most any level. I'm comfortable with that. After a lot of therapy, I'm like pretty comfortable. So it's like, which I'm proud of. Like I'm going to school to get my master's in marriage and family therapy. So I'm on that trajectory.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I witnessed the violence, towards my siblings, and as well as receiving it, as well as seeing my mom being it. So there was like the chaos was coming from all different directions, both parents, siblings against siblings. So it was like, that was the unbalance. And then I brought all of that into my adult life because there was
what was supposed to be a safe space was a war zone, it sounds like.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, keep going.
And this was during the 70s, most of it, early 80s, then early 80s. I was born in 1970. And so help and resources and like maybe teachers intervening in grade school, that really wasn't a big thing. So I kind of slipped through the cracks in terms of like having this intense, like I had a lot of panic attacks, even like in grade school. And so I carried all of that into my adult life, which led me to have these maladaptive behaviors, of course, because I had to,
Yeah.
as you know, we have
Yeah.
to create these coping skills as a kid
Mhm.
in order to survive that time. So, but they don't work as adults.
Well, and I love that you said that. We create them as kids and you don't work as adults. I love that you brought attention to that. That is very powerful. And for those that have had similar experiences, understand, and for those that could be wondering, the central nervous system, now I'm making projections for you, Greg, and speaking for myself more so here, but the central nervous system, like when we experience that fight, flight, or freeze so often as a child, the smallest thing sends our central nervous system into this like overdrive of like, what's going on? What's going on? And like it's happening inside, but the rest of the world just sees us sitting there. But we're like freaking out because like war is about to take place in like a flash of a second. How would you express your version of that, or
I
however you experience? Go ahead.
Oh, I completely agree. I think that's like how our nervous systems respond to trauma. And then when you have prolonged trauma, your nervous system just gets beaten down, and
Mm.
where's that, whatever that gland is that, yeah,
Yeah,
that
is it the
gland,
pituitary, or I think it's that one, right? Or am I saying that one wrong?
it's one of them.
Or
It's
the
maybe in
adrenal
the,
gland, or
yeah, it gets like stressed out, and then I don't know, like especially if you're a child and you go through a lot, your brain develops not in the best way,
correct?
and so yeah, it definitely stored in my body, and my nervous system just went through the ringer, and I kind of perpetuated that
Mm-hmm.
pattern as an adult and did things that kind of continued to beat my body down, and so I guess as a result from all of that, anxiety was a product of that, and then depression
Mm-hmm.
came from that. And so those are like some of the things that manifested from that way your physical body and your brain interacts with trauma.
What was your um what so okay, we're in adulthood, we're doing really
Mhm.
good with the self-destructive behaviors. I had my chapter. Okay, it was a few chapters,
Yes.
fine.
A whole book.
A whole book's worth. Yeah, it was a volume. Okay. So how did take us through, so as an adult you had, how actually, yeah, let me start here. Let me ask this question. How is being a performer is an outlet for you? So how is that balancing in early adulthood? What does that look like?
I think for the most part, and I talk about this too in a lot of my work, especially I'm a performance artist and I'm in the process of developing a new solo show, and I kind of center all of this stuff in that.
Beautiful.
Thank you. It was just very like when I graduated high school, I moved to New York City, and that was my goal, was to be a performer. Like I wanted to be on Broadway, even though I didn't know what that really meant in high school, but that's what everybody said. So
Right.
I went along with
I
when
knew
all the,
that.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I'm going
But
to
they,
try
it's cool. So yeah, yeah.
it. So, but my experiences with childhood trauma just kind of, no matter how much I tried to like move forward in the art form as a young adult, it just wouldn't let me.
Right, right.
So I don't know what happened though, because my inner child just kept telling me not to give up, kept telling me to keep going, even though I was messing up, and I was,
Yeah.
you know, I had this intense, extreme anxiety, and no matter how hot the anxiety was, I still kept going with it, and the anxiety just kept getting worse.
Oh,
so,
yeah, yeah.
so that's kind of how it manifested, and uh, but I still stuck with it. Like like today, I realized like maybe that really wasn't the path I was supposed to go on, and it has led me to this place of like, oh, I want to tell my story my way. I don't want to be um, chosen by somebody sitting behind the audition table, or
Boom.
yeah. So I'm like, and
Yes.
maybe in the future I'll do that, because I'm in a
That's right.
completely different place with everything. So I'm like, maybe I'll try that. But for now, I just want to be in control of my work.
I am a firm believer in everything is as it's supposed to be right now. And furthermore, every every version of us, I believe that we're infinite. So I believe that, you know, we can do anything. So
Mhm.
every version of us that we have existed as in the past, so we are never one thing is my this is just my beliefs, but I'm a little out there, so so we're infinite. So every version of us in the past was we're not just one thing. So every chapter of us, every version was just a chapter, a version. And as we look back, we're like, you know, we're like, oh, what, I can't believe I did that thing, or whatever the case may be. But we needed every single version, every single chapter to get here,
Mhm.
and then we'll evolve again, and in the future we'll look back at this one. Um,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I so agree with that. I
I love it.
really do. I really do.
Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, you go for it.
Okay. What? So once, where did performing? Where does that go? Where did that go as you get a little bit further into being an adult? At what point in time did you get introduced to therapy? How did you even realize it's a thing? Did you have that awareness as a child about therapy, or was it just as an adult? I'm hitting you with like 50 questions. Let me hush up.
That's okay. I'm making a mental note of
Okay,
that.
okay. Go ahead.
um, I learned about therapy as a very young adult, maybe in my early 20s. I moved to New York. It was the early 90s, which was probably one of the best times in the city, due to a lot of like night culture clubs. And it was just very exciting and very creative. There's a lot of creativity. And so a former friend of mine who was going to school to become a therapist, she went to therapy, and that's kind of how I learned about going to therapy. So I made an appointment with her therapist, and I went to maybe two sessions, and then of course, like, my behavior was to start something and not stop it, or not finish it, and I would drop the ball. And but that's when I got the first notion of therapy.
Okay. So that's so funny. I was like nodding my head over here for the people. By the way, for the people listening to the audio, you can go to YouTube Success After Trauma, and you can check out our beautiful faces as well if you'd like. And if you're watching us on YouTube, you can download us on your favorite podcast streaming platform. I was nodding my head over here when you said that because I was like, oh yeah, that's how I did my first therapist. that's
Right,
that's how
right,
I did my first one. It was like 2 sessions, and then I was like, I'm fixed. I'm good. I heard it
right.
all. I got.
Yes.
I went twice. I got it. So
It's the initiation of therapy. It's
right.
like hazing, I guess.
Well, and speaking for myself, I was so nervous, like so nervous to go to a therapist.
Yeah.
And well, for me, I saw a therapist as a child, but that was a whole, I don't know, it was a weird, like controlled situation. I didn't want to be there. I didn't really gain from it. But as an adult, there was the first exposure where I said, hey, I want that. I'm going to pay for that. And I was so nervous and so like, I don't know, like I wanted this person to help me, but I was so freaked out about that person learning about me that like I wouldn't even be worth like once they found out about me, they wouldn't even want to help me no more. like this is like maybe unconsciously playing out for me, but like this was the thing for me at some level. How did you what is it take us through a little bit of the journey? When do you finally get connected emotionally, intellectually, spiritually with therapy? When do you feel called to and connected to therapy?
Great question. And I can relate to that first part that you said.
Yeah.
I think because we've experienced what we've experienced, that has, brought us to that place. It makes sense that we're going to be resistant to therapy and not drop the ball and say, oh, this is not for me, or whatever the case may be. That just makes so much sense. And it took me maybe until I reached 40 years old, 40. So I'm like 53 now. And I think that's when I first started to go to therapy consistently.
Beautiful.
Yeah. And I think, I don't know, it was intuition, I guess. It was like knowing that, God, I need to change something in my life because something's definitely not working. So I started with a therapist in upstate New York, and I saw her for a while, and it was just wonderful. It was a great experience.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
How, what, what do you, what blossomed in life as you went through therapy and coming out the other side? What are some changes that you began to notice with yourself?
Ideally, I personally believe that the latest therapist that I had that
Okay.
I saw for about a year, and then something changed in my insurance and couldn't see him anymore. But I think through him and working with him, that's when everything just, because he showed me to look at my narcissism, to look at I mean, I don't have that diagnosis, but
Yeah,
from
yeah, no, no, no.
from a standpoint of trauma, we do have a wound, we do have
Oh yeah.
narcissistic injury,
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
understand.
I'm included in this for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah,
So
yeah.
he showed me the way of like, wow, I have a part in this conflict too, or whatever the conflict is. So
Yes.
once I was able to see that and notice that, that's when just a lot of tension and anxiety just started to dissipate, and it's just
Wow.
liberating. Yeah.
Wow. I made it. That's I love that. I made a post the other day now for everyone listening and those that have been following for a while already know, but those are catching the first time. Um I'm just on the journey. So I I call them like our blind spots, or I use sometimes the term black swans, which that's Chris Voss's company. I don't know if that name rings a bell, but we have these areas like that. We like think about like a friend tells us about a problem, and we're like, I can't this that and the other. My spouse is doing this, my kids are doing that, my boss did this, my neighbor, and you're like, why don't you just do this? Oh no, I can't because blah, blah, blah. And you're like, they cannot see it. However, it's not they, it's us. We all have these like blind spots of like certain things. And when we have a problem and we're certain that it's has nothing to do with us, like we're hiding our portion in the blind spot somewhere. I made a post the other day, and so I say this to say, I feel obligated to put a disclaimer on this. I have blind spots. I don't want to
I
sound
love
too cool
that.
for everyone. But I made a post the other day, and it said, until you can find out how you're part of the problem or how you're the problem, you're going to be dealing with it for a while.
Absolutely.
And that's
Blind spots. I love blind spots. I'm going to use that from now on.
beautiful.
It is amazing. And you started it. You're starting a new trend. So,
Yeah. Okay, so but I love that. So that realization, and what are some things that, I mean, at an abstract level, if you realize anything specific, that's fine. But as you started realizing like, oh, I can be at cause, like if I can own the problem, I can shift the problem. Tell me about how that's begun to really play out and pay dividends positively for you.
yes. And also, just to add to that, like, even if you had a conflict with somebody else and they were definitely the perpetrator of that,
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
still have a part in it. And
Talk about this, please.
yeah, because if I did not see my part in that too, regardless of how minimal it was, I will demonize that person, and I will like blah 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 blah, and I will, and that's a blind spot, and that I say narcissism, it slips out, it comes out, and you don't
Yeah,
even know it.
yeah,
So
yeah.
when I realized that, like, wow, even the smallest conflicts in interpersonal relationships that may not be something that has anything completely to do with me still does have something to do with me.
I heard. Let me share this real quick. I heard someone say not too long ago, and it was so powerful for me. I adopted the belief. I was like, "Yep, I'll take that one." um, I'll take that one. So they said that, it's a choice, it's a belief, it's a choice. What I'm about to say, people say no, and I'd say, yeah, you're right then. That I heard it say that we manifest every time like someone does something to us and we're frustrated, every single that we manifested them to show us somewhere for us to heal.
Yes, yes.
And I was like, whoa. Because like ultimately, like if we think about like monks and such, like they've submitted to everything. Nothing's a problem. Now, what other people are doing is another situation, but internally, nothing's a problem. Everything that's a problem to us is an opportunity to heal inside.
That is so true.
We're allowed to have boundaries. We're allowed to have, we're allowed to have standards. And so if someone is mistreating you, you're allowed to protect yourself and things of that nature. The realization is that for me, and again, I chose to adopt this as a belief. The realization was, if I feel some kind of way, it requires me to feel some kind of way.
Yeah, yeah,
I was like, whoa, that's powerful.
yeah. And to
Go
sit with
ahead.
those, and to sit with those feelings, and
Yes.
to be, even though
Yes.
you want, they're uncomfortable as craziness, but if we can sit through them, and it's not, it takes work, right? Every day it takes work. You have to work it in order to, you know, whatever result you want. I mean, sometimes you could be lazy about it, or you just, you slip or whatever, but it's a conscious thing. It's a daily thing.
Oh, man, I love what you're dropping over here, Greg. You said, and sitting with the emotion.
Yeah.
Like that is so powerful. Only I would say like a year and a half ago, I don't know if it's been 2 years ago, for the what I would consciously the first time in my life did I learn to begin to sit with emotions. And it was really like a really cool experience the first time for me, I had a lot of I um I was really good at running the program of anger for like all the other emotions. Really good at it. And it was really so. There was a period of time in my on my journey that I realized anger's bad, and so like put it away. And then so that kind of goes into the whole denial phase of things, and it was really cool at some portion of things coming full circle to realizing like I remember the first time that I was mad and someone accused me of being mad, and I was like, yes, I am very mad about this, and I felt so validated, like nothing needed to be done, but like no, I can sit with this right now. Like I am mad. This is not what I expected or wanted to happen. I have to get over this, or actually I'll even say get through this instead of over. I'll use the word get through this, but there's one way through it. And it's really sitting with it, or being sad. Like, we have right now, we have, which is very sad. I mean, we have a pet, we have a dog, and she's most certainly on her last days. I don't know how much longer we'll
Oh.
have her. And
Mhm.
I say that, and I want everyone else to be free and clear of this sadness, but for myself, I'm allowed to just be sad and experience it. When I feel that sadness, I want it to go away. But then
Yeah.
I remind myself, I'm like, no, this is evidence of the love and the relationship. And I really appreciate you calling attention to sitting with the emotion.
Hmm, hmm.
We can really think, I know I did for a period of my, really get to thinking like we got to figure out how to get rid of these emotions. uh, we gotta figure out, I think, again, my choice and belief, but I think we gotta figure out how to enjoy these emotions.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your
That
thoughts,
is
Greg?
that is so true. And I have this belief about, when it comes to depression, anxiety, and those feelings, like sometimes we tend to like put them over here. It's like, okay, that is the enemy. That's what's causing our problems, instead of integrating that into our everyday lives.
Powerful.
And just like you said, sitting with those uncomfortable feelings is definitely powerful. And it's like like I said, it's, I make it, we make it sound so easy and like, oh yeah, you could just do it. But I'm like, no. Oh yeah, it's so easy. Don't,
I'm so,
overnight
oh my gosh.
solutions.
Yeah, yeah, thank you for calling that out too. You're like, oh yeah, like when we're talking about it, that is so, thank you for calling. People listen and like, oh yeah, just sit with it. It's be sad. It's okay.
Yeah. I changed over a cup of coffee and I was fine after that. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I appreciate you calling that out. It's a journey, and but you strengthen it just like anything else in life. You get stronger with it. Stronger is a label, I guess, but you get more fluid with it.
yeah, resilience, like I like to call it the bounce back, like bouncing back a
Yes.
little quicker, like fixing that elasticity, I guess, around that has to do with resilience.
I love that another one, which man, your perspective's been great today. Thank you so much. The, the emotions aren't the enemy.
No,
Go ahead, talk about that a little bit more. That's powerful.
no, I mean, we want them to be. We hate like I want to punch them in the neck sometimes.
Right, right.
I won't do that, but yeah, definitely we see them as the enemy, but it's like that's really our inner child, that inner
Boom,
little boy,
boom.
that's what it is. And that's who we have to um, build a relationship with, or give that little boy hugs, kisses, telling them it's okay, or whatever the lingo is.
I snapped a screenshot of it, or a pic of our screen there, Greg.
Oh,
Um,
Ruby.
yeah, yeah. Dude, that I love. Yeah, that is so powerful because it's so easy for us to alienate the emotion and make the emotion the bad guy. And what you called attention to, it's our inner child. Like we feel some kind of way, and we're allowed to. We're allowed to. And ultimately, two things I love telling people. One, like have you ever seen that commercial with the it's like the Flex Seal tape, and so he like cuts. He has this big like tank, and it's like gushing water. And he takes the tape, and he's like, bam! And he slaps the face of the
Yes.
tape. Yeah. I say like I make a joke like that's boundaries, man. Like when you feel some kind of slap a boundary on it. But what I tell people is like boundaries first and foremost. I am a huge advocate of boundaries, like boundary. And then the other thing I tell people is boundaries are band-aids. Boundaries are band-aids. Ultimately, there's something to heal inside in which you cannot be affected by the situation. You cannot be
Mhm.
affected by the situation. And until you do that healing, look, insert your boundaries. But the realization is what you called attention to. It's our inner child, and we're feeling some kind of way for some reason right now. And there's
Mhm.
something to look into to realize, like, oh, I don't feel validated, or oh, I don't feel safe, or oh, I don't feel heard, or oh, I don't feel seen, or whatever that feeling is, and allowing ourselves to realize, oh, I don't feel this way, and here's what about this situation allows me to feel that way, and then getting a step deeper, here's what happened in childhood that allowed me to have this belief, and here's what I know to be true now that I didn't understand back then, and so because of this truth I can no longer believe that thing, much
Mhm.
like once
Mhm.
upon a time we believed in Santa, or some of us did, so it depends
Wait a
culturally.
minute. What are you talking about?
Wait,
No.
what? He's not real? Um, Tell us a little bit about how did performing, how did you see, and you've already alluded a little bit to, that you're now going into a chapter of, hey, I'm controlling, I'm creating my narrative. How did performing begin to, I'll use the word change, but evolve maybe, or grow after and through the realizations of like, hey, I'm kind of part of these problems too.
I've been working on this show for about a year, well, longer actually, but it just took me a while to get to this point. But for a year, I kind of just I hit the ground running, and it's probably not like it has been over the past 3 or 4 months when I got that. clue. And then all of a sudden, you know, the vision just started to become so clear about what my show is going to be about, my solo play, because I had to answer this question of what is one thing in my life that I've been trying to fix or solve for a long time, and it's been hard to do. And when I could answer that, then I could understand what my show is about and how I want to create the arc of the show, the story, the beginning, middle, and end kind of thing. So, and I think so. I'll share the answer, and it's basically, and like I didn't understand what depression or anxiety fully was as a young adult, or at all. I think that's what I've been trying to solve for a long time, is how to feel better. Simply how to feel better.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
And I tried to feel better in a lot of ways that maybe wasn't healthy. But then
What?
eventually,
No. We don't do that with trauma responses. What are you talking about?
nope.
Yeah. So when give the listeners, if you will, maybe a little teaser, a little forecast. First, let me ask people that want to know a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your mission, want to catch a little bit more of content that you've put out. Where are some places that people can connect with this stuff?
Currently, I am really focused on my show and a podcast that I launched called the Moody Creative Show. And I'd like to center, like in the title, moodiness, moody, and how it's okay to be moody, and how you can integrate a mental health challenge into your creative work,
Yes.
instead of them being so separate and divided.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
I love
So
it. Go
thank
ahead. Keep
you,
going. Keep
thank
going,
you.
please.
No, it's like I just launched the first episode, so I'm really excited. And this is another example of not being aware of things and not following through, because I've had maybe 3 different podcast ideas, and I started out with a few episodes, and then I just didn't follow through. But like, with all this growth and all this awareness, I feel so like this one's a really good one. So I'm really proud of that. And that's a moment I'm proud of too, like follow through.
Yes.
It's a big one.
So where can people listen into your you've released episode 1. Where can people listen in?
You can listen to it on most podcast listening platforms, or you can go to the
Beautiful.
moodycreativeshow.com, and it's there too.
The moodycreativeshow.com. Perfect. I'm gonna write that down. If you're listening to us, go ahead. You can go to YouTube, the channel Success After Trauma. We're gonna have the link right there in YouTube as well. It was the moodycreativeshow.com. Is that correct, Greg?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So for those of you who want to catch that, the episode, Greg's podcast, not this Greg, but that Greg. Those want to catch Greg's podcast. I love what you just talked about. I've loved everything you brought today. I'm like, golly, man, these are like so powerful. To say we all listen, that's just not fair for me to say. And you know, everyone, you guys are allowed to be exactly where you're at. I speak for myself. If you've experienced trauma, things of that nature, I love how you talked about, like, we try to, like, we're two different, like over here we're dealing with our stuff, and over here we're this, like, no, we're one person. We are one. Like, we are meant to be whole, and this is who we are, and the energy that we share, that those choose to consume. So we share energy. I think it is powerful, healing. I think it's the key to happiness, integrating yourself to whole and
Yeah.
sharing your energy whole. All of
Mm-hmm.
you, the good, the
Mm-hmm.
bad, the ugly. Your people
Absolutely.
are out there and they want to hang around with you, all of you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's powerful.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's super powerful. And I can totally relate to that in terms of, like, so I'm on this kick of the word cringe. And there's a quote that I found, and I have no idea who said it. There's no attribution. And it goes, once I accepted I'm cringe, I was able to accept my true self. And I like to look at things that way, in the more obscure,
Yes.
provocateur kind of way. So I was like, wow, I'm going to own my inner cringe,
Yes.
because some of the stuff I put out is weird and different. And like, wow, I relate to that. So yeah, what you said was so powerful. Absolutely.
I love whenever I catch your content, I love your content. By the way, anyone, what's your main social media platform? I catch your content through Facebook, but what's your main social media platform?
Instagram.
Okay, so for those listening in, I know you can definitely catch Greg. Now, Greg, on Facebook, can I? Is it okay if we share your Facebook?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
just Greg, and then pronounce last name Helpin. Am I saying that right?
Halpen, Halpen, as in Nancy.
Okay, Halpen. Was that correct?
Mm-hmm.
So you guys can check out Greg 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 Helpin on Facebook, but then also Instagram. What's your handle on Instagram, Greg?
The Moody Creative 53.
The Moody Creative 53. I love your content. Your content is unique. Every time I'm scrolling, it's like the same food picture, motivational quote, and then Greg pops up and I'm like, "Yes."
You know
Um
what? It's so funny that you say that, because before I, fully actualized my creativity, I was a dessert photographer, and that's all you
that's
that's all you saw on my Facebook,
Oh,
is
that's
all of these
great.
desserts that I made in photographs. So it was just uncanny that you mentioned food.
Is it not? That is so funny. I'm like
Yeah.
food pick, and then Greg pops up. You're like, I used to be the food pick. I'm sure those were great as well. For those listening in, definitely check Greg out on Instagram, Facebook, and then if you guys are called, you're gonna want to check out that podcast show. Obviously, if you're listening in, and if you're that creative type, if you have that part of you that you feel like you've been hiding, it's probably time to go ahead and listen to the Moody Creative Show. Greg, are you bringing in, and I don't, do you know, in the future of the podcast, will you be bringing guests on? Will it always be you? What does that look like?
For the for most of the most weeks, I will deliver monologues. It'll just be me with some things inserted into it, and then occasionally interviews or conversations. So I'm like, interview. It's like, oh my god, I'm nervous. So it's like conversation, chill.
Yeah.
You know.
You're like, now that I've got you here, let me go ahead and ask you a few
Yes.
questions.
That's why I love you. Like, you were so inviting in this podcast. This episode felt just flowy. I felt just, I wasn't nervous, and it was just flowy. So it was really
Awesome,
cool.
awesome. I appreciate that feedback, Greg. Before we get out of here, I always ask my guests to kind of channel a message, and then who that message is for is what I channel. If you would share a message with the creative out there that is afraid to show the world their true self, would you share a message with those
Yeah,
that are listening?
yeah. That's the hardest part of showing your true self, um, for fear of like major judgment or flashback. And just simply what I mentioned earlier about the cringe, you're in your freaky side or your weird side, your quirky side. I think once we can admit or acknowledge that we are quirky, that we are weird, then we can begin to be our true selves. Then we can take that, walk on that creative path of whatever your quirk is, whatever that part of you that just wants to keep hiding. And it takes
Powerful.
work, of course, but it pays off. It really does.
It pays off. It does. It does. It does. Greg, thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that. Thank you for being here today. For everyone listening, again, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can download us on your favorite podcast streaming platform so you can listen to us in the vehicle. If you're catching us on audio, you can watch us on YouTube. Make sure you go check out the moodycreativeshow.com. And until the next episode, be great. It's already in you.